The system was never built for your freedom. It was built for your dependence. From childhood, you were trained to earn, not to own. To trade your time for money and call that stability. To get a job, pay your bills, and die in debt, while the real players collect your interest. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a design. The rich own, the poor owe. The middle class serves both. The purpose of this audiobook is to break that pattern once and for all, because the mantra is simple: own, don't owe. Chapter 1. The system wants you obedient, not independent. You were never taught to be free. You were trained to be functional. That's the first truth you need to swallow before you can build wealth. From the moment you entered a classroom, the world began programming you, not for independence, but for obedience. You were told to sit still, follow the rules, memorize the answers. They taught you how to fit in, not how to stand out. They taught you how to chase grades, not growth. How to work for money, not make money work for you. How to get a job, not how to build assets. You were told that success is a report card, that freedom is a paycheck, that education is debt. And while you followed those instructions, someone else built the system that profits from your obedience. This isn't your fault. You were trained to be a worker in a world owned by investors. The school system was designed during the industrial age, when governments and corporations needed factory workers, not free thinkers. So they built an education model that rewards compliance, not creativity. You were graded on how well you repeated information, not how effectively you could create solutions. You were praised for showing up on time, not for designing your own schedule. You were taught how to earn a living, not how to build a life. That programming doesn't end at graduation. It follows you into adulthood, through the paycheck cycle, the credit trap, and the endless pursuit of more. You get a job, you start earning, you start spending. The system smiles because now you're a consumer, not a creator. Understand this: the economy runs on your dependence. Mortgages keep you tied down. Credit cards keep you chasing payments. Student loans keep you loyal to a paycheck. It's all perfectly engineered. When you owe, you must obey. When you're in debt, your freedom is already sold. You become predictable, a stable, lifelong participant in a system that needs your confusion to stay profitable. The rich designed it this way. They don't need your labor. They need your loyalty. They don't need your brilliance. They need your bills. Every ad, every policy, every cultural norm whispers the same message: stay comfortable, stay consuming, don't question. And while you do, they buy what you financed. They own what you rent. They collect interest while you collect pay stubs. That's the trap. That's the design. But here's the truth. The same system that enslaves the masses rewards the disciplined few. The rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. They use the system's tools not to survive, but to scale. They use debt to acquire assets. They use time to build leverage. They use attention to buy freedom. And they all share one simple mindset: build assets, not status. That is the core mantra. That is the financial discipline. The difference between dependence and independence isn't income, it's intention. You have a choice: asset or liability. Every dollar decides. Think of your income like a river. You can either drink from it every day, or you can build dams that generate power for a lifetime. The poor drink it dry. The middle class stores it in a pond that evaporates over time. The rich build dams, assets, that convert flow into perpetual power. Every paycheck is a chance to build a dam. Every purchase is a test of your discipline. Every decision is either keeping you in the system or freeing you from it. The moment you realize you've been programmed to obey, that's the moment you start to awaken. You don't need permission to be wealthy. You need awareness. You need ownership, not of things, but of decisions. Ask yourself right now, who profits from your habits? Who benefits when you stay broke, distracted, and dependent? It's not a mystery. It's math. Your debt is their income. Your ignorance is their advantage. Your comfort is their control. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start reading differently. You start spending differently. You start thinking in assets, not expenses. That's when the game begins to shift. Let's make this real. Open your banking app right now. Scroll through your last 3 purchases. Ask one simple question for each: asset or liability? If it puts money back in your pocket, it's an asset. If it drains money from your pocket, it's a liability. That's the test. That is the financial discipline. Do this every week. You'll start to see the truth. Your bank statement is a reflection of your mindset. Most people don't have a money problem. They have a priority problem. They're funding comfort instead of freedom. But not you. Not anymore. Wealth begins with unlearning. Unlearning the myths. Unlearning the fear. Unlearning the need to impress. You don't need a degree to build assets. You don't need luck to build wealth. You need focus. You need discipline. That's it. Start reading about money the way you once memorized textbooks. Start observing the wealthy, not envying them. Start questioning every normal financial decision you were taught, because normal is broke. Normal is debt. Normal is dependent. You were trained to serve assets. Now it's time to own them. This is the first battle in the wealth war. The war for your attention. The war for your autonomy. They want you obedient. They want you distracted. They want you loyal to the system that feeds on your focus. But you are not a worker anymore. You are a builder. Remember this mantra and repeat it daily. Build assets, not status. Say it when you wake up. Say it when you spend. Say it when you feel the urge to impress instead of invest. Because every choice is a vote for freedom or for dependence. And when you choose ownership, you begin to win the war. In the next chapter, we expose the system's favorite weapon, comfort. It's disguised as safety. It feels like stability. But it's the reason most people never rise.
Chapter 2. Your salary is a drug. You think a paycheck is freedom. You think getting paid every 2 weeks is security. That is the lie. The paycheck is a drug. It sedates you. It controls you. It keeps you coming back week after week, doing the same work, dreaming the same dream, waiting for the next deposit. The illusion is powerful. A salary feels safe. It feels predictable. You see the number in your account and you feel relief. You feel calm. You feel like life is manageable. But that relief comes at a cost. That comfort is control. That paycheck is permission. Every dollar in your bank is not freedom. It's a leash. Most people never realize this. They trade their ambition for stability. They stay in jobs that drain them because the paycheck is consistent. They stay in comfort because comfort feels safe. And while they feel secure, the world is passing them by. The system designed this. Predictable workers are profitable workers. Controlled employees are reliable revenue streams. Look around. How many of your peers are trapped in this cycle? They clock in, they clock out, they repeat. They hope that one day their loyalty will be rewarded with wealth. But hope is not a strategy. Salary is not strategy. Salary is sedation. Comfort is control. And the rich? The rich don't work for money. They leverage systems that work while they sleep. They leverage assets. They scale ideas. They multiply time. That is the financial discipline. Take a moment and visualize this. Your income is a river. If you drink it slowly, every paycheck keeps you alive, but your river will never flood. You will never power mills, factories, or empires. You are just surviving. Now imagine building dams across that river. Dams that convert flow into perpetual energy. That is what assets do. That is how the rich turn a paycheck into power. That is how you escape sedation and build freedom. The pain of the paycheck is subtle. It is daily. It creeps in through routine. You wake up Monday morning, tired. You spend hours commuting. You meet deadlines. You chase reports. And when Friday comes, you feel relief. You feel a temporary sense of control. But Monday returns, and the cycle continues. You are a prisoner of your own security. You are addicted to your paycheck. The promise is simple. Once you recognize the paycheck for what it is, you can redirect it. You can make it work for you instead of against you. You have a choice, asset or liability. Every dollar that leaves your hand is a vote. You can invest it, you can acquire it, you can convert it into freedom. Or you can spend it and feed the system that profits from your obedience. Build assets, not status. That is the core mantra. That is the truth the system never taught you. Let's look at the contrast. Corporate employees, loyal and disciplined, often spend decades building someone else's dream. They enjoy benefits, insurance, stability, but at the cost of independence. Their work creates wealth for CEOs, shareholders, and the system. They are comfortable, they are controlled, and they rarely escape. Entrepreneurs, on the other hand, take the same hours and attention and deploy them into systems. They create scalable businesses. Their labor multiplies, their money multiplies, their freedom multiplies. That is the difference between sedation and sovereignty. Comfort is seductive. Safety feels like security, but comfort is control. Salary is sedation. The moment you trade curiosity, risk, and growth for the promise of stability, you are enslaved. The system relies on this. It counts on your complacency. And the sad truth is, most never notice until it's too late. Microaction. Open your banking app right now. Look at your last 3 purchases. Ask yourself one question for each, asset or liability. If it puts money back into your pocket, it's an asset. If it drains money from your pocket, it's a liability. That is the financial discipline. That exercise rewires your thinking. It shifts your attention from temporary gratification to long-term power. Do it every week. Make it a habit. Train yourself to see every expense through the lens of assets. Remember, the rich don't work for money. They leverage systems, deploy capital, and create value that accumulates while they sleep. You can do the same. You can turn your paycheck into a tool, not a leash. Every paycheck you earn is a choice. Continue feeding the system or start building the infrastructure for your freedom. Every hour of your time, every dollar of your money can either strengthen your chains or fortify your empire. Repetition reinforces reality. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Build assets, not status. Every moment you trade ambition for convenience, you strengthen the system that benefits from your obedience. Every moment you choose assets over consumption, you reclaim autonomy. Every small decision compounds. Every microaction adds up. Here's another perspective.
Imagine planting seeds. Every paycheck is a seed. If you bury it in consumption, it dies. If you plant it in assets, it grows into trees that bear fruit year after year. You do not need to earn more money to escape the paycheck trap. You need to think differently. You need to act deliberately. You need to discipline your dollars. That is the financial discipline. The addiction is subtle, but the cure is simple. Awareness, choice, and action. Recognize the paycheck for what it is, a tool, not freedom. Deploy it wisely. Invest it in systems, assets, and ventures that multiply over time. Track every dollar. Question every purchase. Build assets, not status. This is the moment you begin to reclaim autonomy. The transition is clear. If Chapter 1 taught you that the system wants you obedient, Chapter 2 shows you how that obedience is maintained. The paycheck is the mechanism. Comfort is the chain. Sedation is the trap. Once you recognize it, you can start breaking free. In the next chapter, we confront the ultimate trap disguised as opportunity. Most people chase jobs, promotions, and titles, believing it leads to freedom. But chasing status keeps you in the system. You cannot escape until you learn to stop trading time for money.
Chapter 3. Stop trading time for money. You will never be rich renting out your time. Say it out loud. It sounds simple. It is simple. And yet most people ignore it. Every hour you trade for money is an hour that can never be recovered. Time is finite. Money is not. Yet millions willingly sell their life in small increments, thinking it is the path to wealth. That is the lie. That is the trap. That is the system at work. From the moment you clock in, you are exchanging what is limited for what inflates. Your time, your energy, your life, gone. In return, you receive a paycheck. It feels fair. It feels safe. It feels normal. But normal is broke. Normal is dependent. Normal is the opposite of freedom. The truth is clear. If your money isn't working, you're still a worker. That is the financial discipline you must learn. Look at Warren Buffett. He doesn't wake up every morning to trade his hours for dollars. His money works harder than he does. Investments generate income while he sleeps. Dividends flow. Capital appreciates. And systems multiply. That is leverage. That is the power of thinking differently about your most precious resource, your time. That is the essence of wealth. The pain is staring you in the face. Most people never escape the cycle because they are addicted to activity. They confuse busyness with progress. They believe that more hours equals more wealth. But here's the cold truth. More hours equals more exhaustion, more stress, and more of the same. You are a worker. You are a wage earner. You are a participant in a system that rewards presence, not independence. The promise is simple. Time can be converted into freedom, but only if you stop trading it blindly. You have a choice, asset or liability. Every decision to trade hours for money is an investment in obedience or a step toward ownership. Every decision to invest in systems, skills, or assets is a vote for autonomy. Every dollar you deploy wisely is a seed that grows into power. Build assets, not status. That is the core mantra. That is the truth that separates the rich from the rest. Consider this analogy. Your income is like a river. If you drink from it, you survive. If you build dams, you generate energy. Dams produce more power than the river alone. The poor drink every drop. The middle class stores it in small ponds that evaporate. The rich build infrastructure that multiplies every ounce of flow. Every paycheck, every hour, every effort can either sustain you or empower you. That is the choice. The pain continues when you realize the scale of opportunity lost. Years pass, decades pass. You are still trading time for money. You work nights, weekends, and overtime thinking wealth is around the corner. But corner after corner delivers the same result. You are still dependent. You are still renting your life. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. If your money isn't working, you're still a worker. Now the promise comes when you take small steps. Start by asking yourself, what can I make work while I sleep? Where can my money, my efforts, or my skills generate returns without constant presence? Systems, investments, businesses, intellectual property. These are the levers that multiply time. These are the engines of independence. Every dollar invested in these levers is a vote for freedom. That is the financial discipline. Microaction. Open your banking app right now. Look at your last 3 purchases. Ask, asset or liability? If it puts money back in your pocket, it is an asset. If it drains money, it is a liability. Now, take it one step further. Ask, what is working for me while I sleep? Where can my money, my efforts, or my skills generate returns without constant presence? Systems, investments, businesses, intellectual property. These are the levers that multiply time. These are the engines of independence. Every dollar invested in these levers is a vote for freedom. That is the financial discipline. The rich don't work for money. They work for leverage. They understand that labor is limited. Assets are not. They invest in ideas, in systems, in ventures that scale. They protect their time like a fortress, and they let money, capital, and strategy do the heavy lifting. That is the truth most people never learn. That is the reason most people remain stuck. Repeat it. You will never be rich renting out your time. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Build assets, not status. Every hour you trade mindlessly is another brick in the wall that keeps you a worker. Every asset you acquire, every system you build, every dollar you deploy intelligently is a chisel that breaks the wall down. The choice is yours. The moment is now. Here's another perspective. Imagine planting trees. Each hour you trade for money is a seed that dies as soon as it is spent. Each dollar you invest in an asset is a seed that grows into a tree, producing fruit year after year. Your paycheck alone cannot feed the tree. Your labor alone cannot water it enough. Only strategic, leveraged action produces lasting wealth. That is the financial discipline. That is how you turn finite time into infinite value. The awakening comes when you stop confusing activity with progress. The path to wealth is not longer ours. The path is smarter deployment. The path is creating systems, investing in assets, and multiplying your most precious resource, time. You will never be rich renting out your life. You will only be rich when your life works for you, not when you work for life. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught you the system wants you obedient. Chapter 2 showed you how the paycheck sedates you. Chapter 3 shows the escape. Stop trading time for money. understand leverage, understand systems, and understand that freedom comes from letting your resources, money, ideas, and effort work harder than you do. In the next chapter, we confront the ultimate weapon of financial dependency, debt disguised as opportunity. Most people borrow to consume, believing they are investing in their future. But borrowing without strategy keeps them chained. Chapter 4. Debt is their weapon. Ownership is yours. Debt is everywhere. It feels normal. It feels necessary. It feels like the path to progress. But that is a lie. That is the trap. Mortgages, car loans, credit cards, personal loans. They are not tools. They are chains. They are leashes that tie you to a system designed to profit from your dependence. Every interest payment is a reminder. The system owns a piece of your life until you pay it off. Most people think debt is inevitable. They think borrowing is just part of adulthood. They buy houses they cannot afford. They lease cars they do not need. They swipe credit cards for status, believing tomorrow's paycheck will save them. And every month the interest grows. The balance rises. The illusion of freedom tightens its grip. That is the pain. That is the reality most never escape. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Debt is dependence. But the truth is simple. If your debt makes you poorer, you're being played. If it makes you richer, you are playing the game. That is the dividing line between the masses and the wealthy. Most people never learn it. Most people borrow to consume. The rich borrow to acquire. They use debt as leverage. They turn other people's money into their own freedom. That is the financial discipline. That is the mindset you must adopt. Consider this. Your income is like a river. You can either drink from it, using it to survive day by day, or you can build dams that generate power for a lifetime. Consumer debt is like drinking the river away. Every dollar consumed reduces your flow. Leveraged debt is like building a dam. Each borrowed dollar can be turned into a machine that produces income, interest, or appreciation. One destroys freedom, the other creates it. That is the choice, asset or liability. Look around. The average household owes more in interest than it earns in passive income. Mortgages, car payments, student loans, they keep people dependent. They keep people trading time for money. They keep people working to feed the system. Meanwhile, the wealthy use the same loans to buy rental properties, dividend stocks, and businesses that pay for themselves. One group is enslaved, the other grows richer. That is the secret they never teach in school. The pain is subtle but relentless. You think you are investing in your future by borrowing, but every payment to a liability is a payment to someone else's freedom. Every dollar spent servicing consumer debt is a dollar that could have been deployed into assets. Every month you delay understanding leverage, you strengthen the chains. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Debt is dependence. But the promise is equally simple. Debt is not evil. It is a tool. But like any tool, it must be used correctly. The wealthy understand the difference. They borrow to acquire income-producing assets. They borrow to create leverage that multiplies wealth faster than labor ever can. They turn scarcity into abundance. That is the mindset. That is the core mantra. Build assets, not status. Here's another way to visualize it. Imagine two people at the edge of a forest. One carries a shovel and digs holes to survive. The other uses a borrowed bulldozer to clear land and plant an orchard. Both start with effort. Both face obstacles, but one ends the day exhausted with nothing to show for it. The other creates growth that compounds every day. Debt used incorrectly is the shovel. Debt used strategically is the bulldozer. That is the difference between dependence and freedom. Remember, every dollar of consumer debt is a vote for obedience. Every dollar invested in an asset is a vote for ownership. Every payment to a liability strengthens the system that profits from your compliance. Every payment to an asset strengthens your autonomy. Build assets, not status. Every choice matters. Every action compounds. That is the financial discipline. That is how the system that enslaves and make it work for you. The pain of ignorance is temporary if you take action. The cost of insight is immediate if you apply it. Stop using debt to consume. Start using debt to acquire. Start thinking in terms of systems and leverage. Start building power that works while you sleep. You have a choice, asset or liability. Every decision is a step toward independence or a step deeper into control. Choose wisely. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught you the system wants you obedient. Chapter 2 revealed the paycheck as a sedative. Chapter 3 showed why trading time for money keeps you a worker. Chapter 4 reveals the tool that can either enslave or liberate: debt. If used correctly, it amplifies your power. If misused, it chains you further. In the next chapter, we confront the habits most people mistake for wealth. Many chase status, appearances, and short-term gratification, believing they are investing in freedom, but in reality, they are building liabilities and illusions. Chapter 5. Build assets, not status. Stop dressing like you've made it. Start building so you do. Say it again. It is simple, it is brutal, and it is the truth most people refuse to see. Consumer culture teaches you that status equals wealth. A new car, a branded watch, a bigger house, designer clothes. These are symbols of success. They feel good. They impress people. They feed ego. But they do not feed freedom. They do not feed your future. They are liabilities masquerading as assets. Most people live to look rich, not to become rich. They borrow, spend, and consume to maintain appearances. Every month, they drain their income on things that depreciate the moment they leave the store. Every flashy purchase is a vote for obedience to the system that profits from their status obsession. That is the pain. That is the trap. That is why so many work harder and harder but never get ahead. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Status is a lie. The promise is simple. Wealth is created by acquiring assets. Assets feed you. Liabilities eat you. That is the financial discipline. Every dollar you allocate can either produce cash flow, appreciation, or leverage, or it can vanish into consumption. Every decision is a choice, asset or liability. Every time you buy something to impress someone, you feed the system. Every time you buy something that produces income, you feed your freedom. Build assets, not status. That is the mantra. That is the path. Think of it like this. Your income is a river. If you drink from it to survive, you barely make it through the day. If you build dams across it, you generate power for life. Flashy items are like pouring water on sand. They disappear. Assets are the dam. They trap flow, convert energy, and multiply it over time. That is how the rich operate. That is how they escape dependence. That is how they scale freedom. The pain is reinforced by envy. You see peers flashing new gadgets. You scroll social media comparing lifestyles. You feel inadequate. You spend to keep up. You borrow to maintain image. That is slavery disguised as choice. That is status over substance. That is why so many people remain stuck. They are asset poor, liability rich, and addicted to approval. The rich don't work for money. They don't chase likes. They build systems. They acquire assets. That is the difference. The promise is that you can escape. You can redirect your attention, energy, and resources. You can focus on assets that feed you, not liabilities that drain you. You can say no to the urge to impress and yes to the discipline of acquisition. That is the financial discipline. That is the power of clarity. That is the path to independence. Microaction. Open your banking app right now. Look at your last 3 purchases. Ask yourself, asset or liability? Did it add value or drain value? Track it. Challenge yourself every week to replace liabilities with assets. That is how habits compound. That is how wealth is built. That is how the system is turned in your favor. Look at the wealthy. They rarely display ostentation. They don't need approval. Their power is silent but unstoppable. They buy income, not attention. They acquire assets that generate cash flow, appreciation, and leverage. They understand the principle. Status fades. Assets pay forever. That is the core mantra. Build assets, not status. Repeat it daily. Apply it relentlessly. Let it guide every financial decision. Here's another perspective. Imagine planting seeds. Every purchase can either plant a tree that bears fruit or plant weeds that choke your soil. Designer shoes? Weeds. Rental property? Tree. Dividend stock? Tree. Luxury car? Weeds. Online business? Tree. Every dollar you allocate is a vote. Every vote compounds. Every vote is a reflection of your discipline. That is the truth most people ignore. That is the power of building assets. The pain of ignoring this is long-term and silent. Over decades, liabilities pile up. They grow. Interest compounds. Opportunity is lost. Dreams shrink. The illusion of wealth continues to seduce, but nothing changes. Meanwhile, assets multiply quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. That is how freedom accumulates. That is how wealth compounds. That is why the rich continue to grow richer while the rest remain dependent. You have a choice. You can chase the approval of others. You can chase fleeting status. You can feed liabilities and remain stuck. Or you can build assets. You can invest. You can leverage. You can acquire what multiplies while you sleep. Build assets, not status. That is the financial discipline. That is the core mantra. That is how ordinary people break free from the system. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught you the system wants you obedient. Chapter 2 revealed that salary is a drug. Chapter 3 showed that trading time for money keeps you enslaved. Chapter 4 taught how debt can trap or liberate. Chapter 5 teaches the ultimate weapon against the system, focusing on assets, not appearances. Once you internalize this, you stop feeding liabilities, you start growing freedom. In the next chapter, we confront the invisible threat that destroys most people's financial discipline: impulsive desire. Most people spend money emotionally, following whims, trends, and envy. But wealth is built by controlling desire, not indulging it.
Chapter 6. Money obeys discipline, not desire. You don't need more money. You need more control. Say it out loud. It sounds simple, but most people never grasp it. They chase higher salaries, bigger bonuses, and windfalls, believing wealth is a number. That is the lie. That is the trap. Money obeys discipline, not desire. Every dollar spent emotionally, every purchase made impulsively, every whim indulged destroys wealth before it even starts. Most people live in chaos. They swipe cards without thought. They follow trends. They chase approval. Every impulse purchase is a vote for dependence. Every emotional expense compounds like interest on a liability. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Desire is destruction. That is the pain. That is the cycle that keeps most people working harder without ever building freedom. The promise is clear.
Control creates wealth. Chaos kills it. Discipline is not boring. Discipline is power. Discipline is the tool that turns ordinary income into extraordinary outcomes. You have a choice, asset or liability. Every dollar you allow to follow impulse is feeding liabilities. Every dollar you allocate with strategy is an investment in independence. Build assets, not status. That is the core mantra. That is how the rich operate. Consider this. Your income is like a river. If you drink from it carelessly, it disappears, leaving nothing but thirst. If you build dams, you convert flow into power that lasts a lifetime. Emotional spending is drinking every drop. Discipline is building the dam. The river doesn't care about your impulses. It obeys structure. It obeys control. Your money is the same. Look at the strategies the wealthy use. Automatic investment plans, the 50-30-20 rule. Assets are bought before desires are indulged. Every paycheck is split. A portion goes to needs, a portion to wants, and a portion to investments. This creates a framework that prevents chaos. This prevents emotional decisions from eroding freedom. That is the financial discipline. That is the tool most people ignore. That is why most people fail. The pain of ignoring discipline is subtle at first. You think a small impulse purchase doesn't matter. One lunch, one gadget, one online splurge. But the habit compounds. Weeks become months. Months become years. Over time, these small acts of chaos dwarf the gains from income. That is why wealth is rare. That is why the rich look calm. They control every dollar. That is the lesson you must internalize. The promise is immediate. You can take control now. You can set rules for your money. You can automate investments. You can assign dollars before temptation hits. You can redirect emotional energy into strategic action. That is how ordinary people transform into owners. That is how wealth accumulates quietly while the world chases fleeting desire. Build assets, not status. That is the core mantra. That is how control turns into wealth. The pain of ignoring this principle is long-term. You might feel temporary satisfaction, fleeting pleasure, instant gratification. But in 10 years, nothing is left. The accounts are empty. The assets are minimal. The paycheck is still a leash. The system keeps working while you do. But when discipline is applied, wealth compounds invisibly. Investments grow. Passive income multiplies. Freedom expands. That is why the rich seem untouchable. They obey structure, not desire. You have a choice. You can continue indulging whims. You can let money drift like water through a sieve. Or you can take control. You can automate, allocate, and acquire. You can feed assets, starve liabilities, and let discipline dictate the flow. Build assets, not status. That is the core mantra. That is the path out of dependence. That is how ordinary people gain extraordinary freedom. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught you the system wants you obedient. Chapter 2 revealed that salary is a drug. Chapter 3 exposed trading time for money. Chapter 4 taught how debt can trap or liberate. Chapter 5 showed why chasing status destroys wealth. Chapter 6 demonstrates the ultimate weapon of the disciplined, control over desire. Master this, and you finally direct money instead of it directing you. In the next chapter, we confront a hidden lever of wealth accumulation, multiple streams of income. Most people rely on one paycheck and call it security, but freedom is built through diversification.
Chapter 7. The rich think in systems. The poor think in paychecks. If you're not building a system, you are someone's system. Say it again. It sounds harsh, but it is true. Most people trade hours for dollars, relying on a paycheck that controls their life. They punch clocks, meet deadlines, and follow routines designed by someone else. That is the trap. That is dependence disguised as stability. That is why the poor work harder without getting ahead. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Paychecks create obedience. The rich think differently. They think in systems. They understand that time is finite, but income is infinite. They build structures that work for them, not structures they must work for. Real estate investors own properties that generate rent automatically. Digital entrepreneurs create businesses that sell products or services 24/7. Each system multiplies time, leverage, and freedom. That is the promise. That is the core mantra. Build assets, not status. The pain is obvious when you look at the typical worker. Monday morning, alarm rings. You commute. You work. You return. You sleep. And the cycle repeats. You are part of someone else's machine. You trade hours for wages. Every dollar earned is tied to presence. Every decision is constrained by someone else's rules. That is dependence. That is slavery disguised as employment. That is why so few escape. The promise comes when you adopt a systems mindset. Every asset, every investment, every income stream can be designed to work without constant oversight. A rental property collects rent while you sleep. Stocks pay dividends while you focus on other projects. A digital business sells products automatically. Each system multiply, leverage, and scale. That is how freedom accumulates. That is how the rich create wealth that grows while others are trapped trading hours for dollars. Think of your income like a river. Drinking from it sustains you. Building dams along it multiplies power. The poor drink. The middle class stores water in a leaky pond. The rich build systems that convert flow into energy that works forever. Systems are the dams, the turbines, the engines that transform limited time into unlimited wealth. That is why you must shift focus from working for money to building structures that work for you. That is the financial discipline. Look at examples. Real estate investors buy multiple properties. They hire management teams, automate rent collection, and let tenants fund growth. Digital entrepreneurs develop products once and sell to thousands online. Each system runs independently of their daily attention. They scale time, they scale income, they scale freedom. That is how the rich think. That is how the poor remain bound by paychecks. That is the difference between independence and dependence. The pain deepens when you realize how easily systems outperform labor. You could work 60 hours a week and earn $60,000 a year, or you could design a system, invest in assets, automate processes, and earn $60,000 in passive income while working 10 hours a week. Time is the multiplier. Systems leverage energy. Labor is finite. Assets are infinite. That is the truth the system hides. That is why most people never escape the cycle. The promise is actionable. You can start small. Identify one repetitive task in your life or work. Can it be automated, delegated, or converted into a system? Can a dollar you spend create ongoing returns? Can a skill you own generate recurring income? Make a plan. Take one step today. That is the discipline that builds autonomy. That is how you convert time into freedom. The rich don't work for money. They build machines, systems, and assets that work for them. Labor is temporary. Systems are permanent. Assets are leverage. Paychecks are chains. That is why wealth is not about effort. It is about design. That is why freedom comes to those who engineer systems. That is why the core mantra is essential. Build assets, not status.
Every decision you make should reinforce this principle. Every dollar, every hour, every choice counts. Here's another perspective. Imagine planting a forest. Each tree represents an income stream. If you water and care for a single tree manually, your harvest is limited. If you plant seeds strategically, hire gardeners, and install irrigation, the forest multiplies automatically. Each tree becomes a system producing fruit, shade, and resources. That is how the wealthy create abundance. That is how you shift from dependence to independence. That is how systems transform lives. The pain of ignoring this lesson is lifelong. Rely on a paycheck and you remain a worker. Depend on labor and you remain constrained. Follow impulses and you remain reactive. Build systems and you create leverage. Automate income. Multiply assets. Reclaim time. That is the path out of the rat race. That is how ordinary people break free from the machine that profits from their obedience. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught obedience. Chapter 2 exposed the paycheck trap. Chapter 3 showed the limitations of trading time for money. Chapter 4 revealed how debt can enslave or liberate. Chapter 5 emphasized assets over status. Chapter 6 reinforced discipline over desire. Chapter 7 now shows the ultimate multiplier, systems. Once you understand this, you can scale time, income, and freedom simultaneously. In the next chapter, we explore another multiplier, leverage in investing. The rich don't just build systems, they use money and capital strategically to grow wealth exponentially.
Chapter 8. Inflation is the invisible tax. You can't save your way to wealth in a system that devalues your savings. Say it again. Most people believe hoarding cash equals security. They park money in a savings account and call it responsible. That is a lie. That is the trap. Inflation is the invisible tax. Every year, it silently erodes the value of your money while the cost of living rises. Cash rots, assets rise. That is the pain. That is the reality most people never see. Consider this. $100 in 2000 could buy what $50 can today. Meanwhile, $100 invested in stocks back then doubled, tripled, or even quintupled depending on the investment. The math is brutal. Sitting on cash is a slow death. Watching prices rise while your bank balance remains stagnant is a quiet theft. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Cash is a liability if it does not produce value. That is why the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. The promise is clear. You can fight back. You can turn the invisible tax into a visible opportunity. Inflation punishes cash, but rewards assets. Stocks, real estate, businesses, and other investments appreciate over time. They grow faster than the cost of living. They compound. They multiply. That is the financial discipline. That is the choice, asset or liability. Build assets, not status. That is how you win in a system designed to devalue your savings. The pain continues for those who ignore this principle. Every paycheck that is saved rather than invested loses value. Every small emergency fund, if kept entirely in cash, erodes over years. The more you rely on money sitting idle, the more you feed the system that profits from your obedience. That is why wealth is not built through saving alone. That is why the rich don't hoard dollars, they deploy them strategically. Here is the promise. Understand the power of compounding and the erosion of inflation. Deploy capital into assets that rise in value, produce income, or appreciate faster than the cost of living. Let your money work while you sleep. Let it compound. Let it multiply. That is the financial discipline. That is the difference between surviving and thriving. That is why the core mantra matters. Build assets, not status.
Every dollar you allocate should either grow or produce income. Anything else is a liability. Microaction. Open your banking app right now. Look at your last 3 deposits or last 3 purchases. Ask yourself, asset or liability? Then ask, is this protecting my wealth from inflation or allowing it to erode? Even a small step, moving $50 from a savings account into an index fund, starts the habit of turning money into a system that multiplies. That is how ordinary people gain extraordinary freedom. That is how wealth compounds while the unprepared watch their cash vanish. Think of your income as a river. Drinking from it keeps you alive day to day. Building dams with it converts flow into energy that powers your life for decades. Inflation is the slow leak in your bucket. Assets are the dam that captures the flow. The poor drink and watch it vanish. The middle class stores in leaky buckets. The rich build systems that multiply every dollar, every hour, every effort. That is how wealth grows. That is how freedom accumulates. Look at real-world examples. Investors who bought stocks, real estate, or businesses 20 years ago have far more purchasing power than those who kept the same amount in cash. Inflation alone is a silent thief, but assets are a shield. Stocks and property compound faster than rising prices. They generate dividends, rent, and profit while the system steals from the unprepared. That is the truth few understand. That is why ordinary savers never escape. That is why the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. The pain of inaction is compounded by time. The longer you leave cash idle, the more wealth evaporates. A decade of stagnation can erase the benefit of years of work. Inflation is merciless. That is why discipline matters. That is why deploying capital consistently into appreciating assets matters. That is the financial discipline. That is how ordinary people start building independence while the unprepared remain enslaved to a slowly eroding system. The promise is also psychological. Once you internalize the invisible tax, you stop hoarding cash unnecessarily. You start deploying funds into assets that appreciate or produce income. You start building systems that work while you sleep. You gain control. You stop chasing money and start letting money work for you. That is the mindset. That is the core mantra. Build assets, not status. That is how ordinary income transforms into extraordinary wealth. Here's another way to visualize it. Imagine a loaf of bread that loses half its size every year. That is your cash in an inflationary system. Now imagine a tree planted that doubles in size every 5 years. That is your stock portfolio or investment property. One shrinks quietly, one grows invisibly but powerfully. Which would you rather hold? The choice is clear. That is why assets matter. That is why the rich don't hoard cash. They acquire value that rises faster than the invisible tax can touch it. You have a choice. Remain dependent on cash or turn it into systems that generate freedom. You have a choice. Asset or liability. Every dollar can be deployed to fight inflation or wasted to feed it. Build assets, not status. Control your money. Multiply your resources. Protect yourself from the silent erosion of wealth. That is how ordinary people begin the journey to extraordinary financial independence. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught obedience. Chapter 2 revealed the paycheck trap. Chapter 3 exposed trading time for money. Chapter 4 showed how debt can enslave or liberate. Chapter 5 emphasized assets over status. Chapter 6 reinforced discipline over desire. Chapter 7 revealed the power of systems. Chapter 8 now demonstrates why cash alone will fail and how deploying assets protects and multiplies wealth. In the next chapter, we explore how the rich accelerate their wealth exponentially.
Leverage. Most people work harder for every dollar. The wealthy use borrowed capital strategically to amplify results.
Chapter 9. Learn the game or be played by it. If you don't understand the rules, you're not in the game. Say it again. Most people think showing up is enough. They earn a paycheck, pay bills, and call it success. That is a lie. That is the trap. Money flows to those who understand it. Knowledge is leverage. Financial literacy separates owners from workers. Without it, you are a pawn in someone else's system. Comfort is control. Salary is sedation. Ignorance is dependence. Most people scroll endlessly. They consume reels, posts, and news, thinking it counts as learning. Meanwhile, the wealthy read, study, and analyze. Warren Buffett reportedly reads 500 pages a day. He studies businesses, investments, and markets. He understands the rules of money at a level most will never reach. Knowledge compounds like interest. Ignorance compounds losses. That is the pain. That is the divide. That is why the rich keep getting richer while the uneducated remain trapped. The promise is simple. You can take control. You can learn the rules. You can read, analyze, and apply. You can turn information into income. You can transform understanding into assets. That is the financial discipline. That is the difference between being played and playing the game. Build assets, not status. Every hour spent learning is leverage for a lifetime. Every decision guided by knowledge multiplies freedom. Consider this. Your income is like a river. You can drink from it, barely surviving. Or you can build dams along its course, capturing flow and converting it into energy. Knowledge is the blueprint for the dams. Without understanding, your river remains wild and wasted. With understanding, every dollar works harder, every investment compounds, and every opportunity is amplified. That is how the rich operate. That is how ordinary people transform into owners. The pain of ignorance is hidden, but powerful. You think you're making progress by earning more. You think working overtime, chasing promotions, or following trends builds wealth. But without understanding the game, without financial literacy, every dollar is vulnerable to mismanagement, bad decisions, and inflation. Cash rots, liabilities multiply, assets remain out of reach. That is why most people stay dependent, working hard without getting ahead. The promise is immediate. Knowledge is leverage. Learn the language of money, understand assets, liabilities, leverage, and systems. Learn how capital compounds. Learn how markets operate. Even a few hours a week applied consistently compounds into enormous advantage. That is the financial discipline. That is the core mantra. Build assets, not status. That is how ordinary income transforms into extraordinary freedom. Microaction. Open your banking app right now. Look at your last 3 purchases. Ask, asset or liability? Then ask yourself, what did I learn from this transaction? Could it have been better managed? Could I have applied knowledge to make it an asset? Track your insights weekly. Commit to learning one principle of wealth each day. Read, analyze, and apply. That is the habit that separates owners from workers. That is how knowledge becomes leverage. Look at examples. Buffett reads books and financial reports. Most people scroll social media endlessly. Entrepreneurs study systems, assets, and market dynamics. Workers trade hours for money. Owners deploy knowledge to acquire assets that generate income automatically. Knowledge multiplies leverage. Knowledge protects from mistakes. Knowledge creates options. That is why the rich don't work for money, they let knowledge work for them. That is the difference between freedom and dependence. Here's another way to see it. Imagine trying to play chess without knowing the rules. You move pieces randomly. You lose every time. Now imagine reading, studying, and practicing daily. You anticipate moves, set traps, and control the board. That is money. Those who know the rules create advantage. Those who ignore them are always at the mercy of others. Financial literacy is the ability to see the board while others are blind. That is the power you must harness. The pain of not learning compounds silently. You may feel safe with your paycheck. You may feel secure with your routine. But the world moves faster than your understanding. Prices rise. Opportunities are missed. Others capture the growth that could have been yours. Ignorance costs more than money. It costs freedom. That is why the core mantra is essential. Build assets, not status. Knowledge converts income into systems, assets, and leverage that endure beyond your labor. You have a choice. You can remain unaware, trading hours for obedience. You can be played by the system. Or you can learn, understand, and apply. You can read, analyze, and invest wisely. You can build systems, acquire assets, and create leverage. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary owners. That is how financial literacy turns dependence into freedom. That is how the rich control their future. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught obedience. Chapter 2 revealed the paycheck trap. Chapter 3 exposed trading time for money. Chapter 4 showed how debt can enslave or liberate. Chapter 5 emphasized assets over status. Chapter 6 reinforced discipline over desire. Chapter 7 revealed the power of systems. Chapter 8 explained inflation and the devaluation of cash. Chapter 9 now teaches the ultimate multiplier, knowledge. Master this, and every financial decision compounds advantage. In the next chapter, we explore how the wealthy accelerate growth exponentially by using leverage. Most people work harder for every dollar. The rich use borrowed capital strategically to multiply results.
Chapter 10. Freedom requires focus. The longer you stay distracted, the longer you stay broke. Say it again. Most people think time is infinite. They scroll, click, watch, and consume endlessly, believing productivity will magically appear. That is a lie. That is the trap. Your attention is being sold. Every notification, every alert, every trending post is designed to steal your focus and keep you dependent. Comfort is control. Dopamine is sedation. Distraction is debt. The pain is invisible, but relentless. Every hour spent on mindless scrolling, gossip, or entertainment is an hour lost in building freedom. Your focus is your currency, and like any currency, it must be guarded. Most people trade it carelessly. They sacrifice hours of concentration for fleeting pleasure, unknowingly feeding systems designed to keep them working harder and earning less. That is why so many remain trapped, chasing money without ever creating wealth. The promise is powerful. Wealth requires focus. The rich guard their attention like a fortress. They understand that 1 hour of undisturbed work compounds far more than 10 hours of distracted effort. Systems, assets, investments, and strategies all require concentrated time to grow. Focus multiplies productivity. Focus amplifies learning. Focus converts ordinary effort into extraordinary results. That is the financial discipline. That is the core mantra. Build assets, not status. Think of your income like a river. You can drink from it day by day, distracted and barely survive. Or you can build dams along its course, capturing flow to generate power for a lifetime. Focus is the dam. Distraction is the leak. Every hour you lose to scrolling, gossip, or entertainment is an hour lost in building freedom. Every hour you invest in learning, strategy, or asset building strengthens the structure and multiplies your freedom. That is how the rich operate. That is how ordinary people transform into owners. Look at examples. Entrepreneurs who guard their mornings, eliminate distractions, and dedicate blocks of time to high-leverage work multiply their results.
Investors who study, analyze, and strategize gain returns far beyond what a distracted worker can achieve. Employees trading attention for notifications remain dependent on the system, barely progressing. Systems create wealth, but only if your focus feeds them. Distraction destroys leverage before it begins. That is why the rich don't work for money. They protect their attention. The pain escalates when you see how easily attention can be stolen. Social media, news, apps, and emails are designed to hijack focus. Each ping is a trap. Each swipe feeds someone else's system while draining your potential. The more distracted you become, the more time and energy is siphoned away from asset building, investing, and learning. That is why so many remain stuck. They have income, but no independence. They have dollars, but no leverage. That is the silent tax of distraction. The promise is immediate. You can reclaim your attention. You can schedule blocks of uninterrupted time. You can remove notifications, limit scrolling, and prioritize asset-building activities. You can guard the hours that matter, the hours that compound into freedom. That is the financial discipline. That is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. That is how build assets, not status, becomes more than a mantra. It becomes a lifestyle. Micro-action. Open your calendar right now. Block 1 uninterrupted hour today for focused work on income, investment, or skill building. Remove all notifications. Close apps. Silence distractions. Ask yourself, will this hour feed an asset or a liability? Make it a habit daily. Protect your attention like it's gold, because in the economy of wealth, it is. That is how freedom begins. That is how ordinary income becomes extraordinary independence. Here's another way to see it. Imagine a river flowing toward the ocean. Distraction is a series of leaks in the riverbank. Every leak drains power, reduces flow, and diminishes potential energy. Focus is building levees and dams, capturing the river's full power, storing energy for the long term. You have a choice. Drink from the river and watch it vanish, or harness it to generate lifelong freedom. Build assets, not status. Protect your attention. Multiply your results. The rich guard time relentlessly. They schedule, plan, and prioritize relentlessly. Mornings are sacred. Learning is sacred. High-leverage work is sacred. Distraction is eliminated. The poor do the opposite. Hours are frittered away. Minutes are lost to trivialities. Days disappear. Income may increase, but freedom does not. The rich don't work for money. They protect their most valuable asset, focus. That is why attention is the new currency. That is why discipline compounds faster than income. That is why build assets, not status, matters. You have a choice. You can remain distracted, feeding someone else's system. Or you can protect your attention, apply focus to building assets, and multiply freedom. You can replace mindless scrolling with high-leverage work. You can guard your mornings, your evenings, and your thinking time. That is the financial discipline. That is how ordinary people break free. That is how wealth is created, silently, steadily, and powerfully. The transition is clear. Chapter 1 taught obedience. Chapter 2 exposed the paycheck trap. Chapter 3 revealed trading time for money. Chapter 4 showed how debt can enslave or liberate. Chapter 5 emphasized assets over status. Chapter 6 reinforced discipline over desire. Chapter 7 revealed the power of systems. Chapter 8 explained inflation and the erosion of cash. Chapter 9 showed how knowledge multiplies leverage. Chapter 10 now teaches the ultimate multiplier of all, focus. Guard it, and every asset, every system, every plan compounds faster than distraction can destroy. In the next chapter, we bring all the lessons together and deliver the ultimate challenge to declare your financial independence.
Chapter 11. Claim your wealth. Take control today. You have everything you need to begin. Say it again. You have everything you need. The system wants you obedient. It wants you dependent. It wants you distracted. It wants you trading time for money, sleeping through opportunities, hoarding cash that rots, and chasing status that fades. That was the trap. That was the pain. But now you know better. Now you understand the rules. Now you can play the game instead of being played by it. The promise is simple. Freedom is available. Wealth is available. Control is available. Build assets, not status. That is the mantra that ties everything together. Discipline over desire. Systems over labor. Knowledge over ignorance. Focus over distraction. Debt as leverage, not as a leash. Assets over status. This is your blueprint. This is your path. Every chapter you have absorbed builds a principle, a weapon, a lever that multiplies independence. That is the financial discipline. That is how ordinary income becomes extraordinary freedom. Microaction. Open your banking app right now. Look at your last 3 purchases. Ask, asset or liability? Then ask, what did I learn? What systems can I build? How can I convert this income into multiplying streams? Make a plan. Take one step today. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary owners. That is how control replaces dependence. That is how freedom compounds. Think of your life like a river. You can drink from it and survive day by day. Or you can build dams, turbines, and reservoirs to convert flow into power that fuels your life for decades. Every lesson you've learned so far is a blueprint for building those dams. Every principle, every microaction, every habit compounds into wealth. That is why the rich don't work for money. They let systems, knowledge, and discipline do the work. That is how the wealthy convert ordinary resources into extraordinary freedom. You have a choice. You can continue living in the rat race, trading hours for dollars, consuming content that distracts you, hoarding cash that devalues, and chasing approval that fades. Or you can take control. You can apply every lesson, every principle, every habit you've learned. You can protect your focus, acquire assets, build systems, leverage knowledge, and use capital strategically. That is the path to freedom. That is the difference between the obedient and the independent. Repetition matters. You have a choice, asset or liability. Build assets, not status. That is the mantra. That is the rule. That is the power that separates workers from owners. That is how ordinary income transforms into extraordinary wealth. That is how the system that wants to trap you can be turned into the very mechanism that liberates you. The pain of inaction is permanent. The longer you delay, the more you remain part of the system and the more opportunities pass you by. Every paycheck spent without strategy, every hour wasted, every impulse followed is compounding against you. The promise of freedom, however, is equally powerful. One decision today, one microaction, one habit built consistently. That is how wealth begins. That is how freedom compounds. That is how you step from obedience into ownership. Here's your challenge. Type in the comments, speak out loud, or write it down. I am a wealth builder. Say it with conviction. Say it as a declaration. Say it as a commitment. Not tomorrow, not later, today. Declare your independence. Declare your focus. Declare your discipline. Declare that you will build assets, not chase status. That is how the mind shifts from poverty thinking to wealth thinking. That is how ordinary people claim extraordinary control over money and life. Every chapter has been building to this moment. You now understand that the system wants to control you. You now know that salary is a drug, debt can be a weapon, and focus is the ultimate currency. You now understand that knowledge multiplies, systems scale, and inflation erodes unprepared cash. You now have a blueprint. You now have tools. You now have a core mantra. Build assets, not status. This is not theory, this is action. This is execution. This is freedom waiting for you to claim it. The final promise is this: the moment you commit, the moment you act, the moment you focus, everything changes. Ordinary income becomes extraordinary. Time compounds, knowledge multiplies, assets grow, systems scale, discipline rules, freedom begins. That is the power you now hold. That is the wealth that is yours to claim. Remember, build assets, not status. You have a choice, asset or liability. That is the financial discipline. The rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. Today, right now, take your first step. Claim your wealth. Take control. Protect your focus. Deploy your income. Learn, act, and multiply. This is your life. This is your freedom. This is your wealth. You've just seen the truth. The system isn't broken, it's built this way. But now you know how to play it. The rich aren't smarter, they're just more disciplined. They don't chase income, they chase ownership. They don't react, they design. This is your moment to cross over, from worker to owner, from consumer to creator, from surviving to scaling. Repeat it out loud. Own, don't owe. And if you're ready to declare your transformation, type it in the comments right now. I am a wealth builder. That's not just a comment, that's your contract with your future.